All right, we did track down the great Joe Theismann, who was, I was lucky enough to have him do the forward to Faith Restored. And in the forward, he talks about what it was like in the old days when he was winning Super Bowls. And he talks about all the years of people saying, what do you think's going to happen with the Skins this year? And you weren't necessarily lying, but you were overly optimistic. Now you actually have that faith restored and you believe in the team once again. Is that right, Joe?
Yes, I do, very much so. I mean, we've had so much change. And first of all, good morning, everybody.
Hello, Joe. Good morning.
Thought the season got off to an incredible start last night with a heck of a football game, and looking forward to a great one on Sunday with us against the Giants. Even a better one, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. But no, I mean, people would come up to me and say, what do you think? And, cautious optimism was the way I always defined it. Mm-hmm. You get excited. They'd sort of tease us a little bit, 2, 3, 4 games, and then all of a sudden, something would happen. Somebody'd get hurt. Changes were made.
Out. Yeah.
There were so many changes that occurred during that period of time. I'm excited to read the book. I think it's flattering to ask me to do the forward. I appreciate it. Give me a chance to reflect back on a lot of memories and thoughts I had during that period of time. Really through the 80s, I guess you could say. It was an incredible time for us here in the city of Washington. And you can feel the energy. It's getting closer and closer. It's building its momentum as we move towards Sunday.
Joe, I'm wondering, they're making a big deal about this being the oldest team in the league, and you played on some veteran-laden teams, right? There's some legendary stories of all you vets and training camp stories, et cetera. What do you make of that? Adam Peters talked about how it could be an advantage for them.
I think it is an advantage. I don't buy into this being quote unquote the oldest team. If you add 2 or 3 older people, all of a sudden the average just jumps up. You had, Vaughn, for example, your average jumps up. Mm-hmm. You look around at different positions. Bobby Wagner, your average jumps up. But I think Adam has done a terrific job, and Dan choosing the people they wanted in the positions that they needed the most help in. Our draft, you look at our draft, every position taken was one that could use depth and or the ability to be able to, make plays like, Jaden obviously goes without saying. But I think that through the course of the year, you're going to see a lot of teams. You see a lot of young guys get hurt during the course of a year.
Yeah.
When you're a veteran football team, when I joined this team in 74, we were the oldest team in football. We were the strongest union team in football. And I mean, to crack into this team as a young guy was a very difficult situation. That's why I returned punts. I just wanted to be a part of something.
So that really is insane that a quarterback was returning punts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. But I don't see it as a disadvantage at all. I think there's a great blend of youth, experience, excitement, and knowledge. That's the way I would define this football team.
Joe, how big is it that Cliff Kingsbury decided to stay around for year 2 as the OC instead of taking a head coaching gig elsewhere? How big is that for Jaden's development in year 2 here in Washington?
I think it's huge. I think that, again, when you talk about coaching changes, you also talk about system changes, coordination changes, and I think it's huge for Jaden's growth. I think it's huge for this offense. Cliff, I thought, did a masterful job. You and I, we talked a fair amount last year, and I was so impressed with the way that he called games to give Jaden a chance to be able to get comfortable, to work himself into being the quarterback that he became. The athleticism is there. The intelligence is there. There's so many wonderful things about Jaden. And the one element that I think nobody really gave a lot of credit to was Cliff's ability to be able to utilize those talents in different ways.
So Joe, talk about this game. All right. Giants are kind of a different roster. All right. Their coaching staff is under the gun. If you had to put money on, they're probably going to be out at the end of the year unless they really turn it around. But they drafted Jackson Dart, so maybe that's this can salvage a head coaching
another
career.
Year, salvage another year,
maybe another year. But they got Neighbors. He's stud. They got a really good defense. They drafted Abdul Carter, who's going to be a Micah Parsons-like type of player. I think their defense is going to be a challenge on Sunday. What do you think?
I agree with you. I do. Anybody that thinks, we're 6.5 point favorites in this football game.
Right.
If you look at the Giants of last year, they were quite dysfunctional last year. I mean, we all can concede that. It was, but they play us tough. Again, it's a division game. Number one, it's in our division. The other thing is there's there's such a different football, and you bring it up. I think their defense is going to be very good. They have stability at the quarterback position, which they didn't have last year, and they have performance at the quarterback position, which you anticipate will be better. I think it's going to be a hard-fought football game. I think it's going to be a close football game. And the worst thing we could possibly do is take this football team lightly, saying, oh, it's the Giants. We beat them a couple times last year. No, you better tighten up that chin strap, because I think this is going to be a slugfest. I think this one, there's no love loss, and it's going to be a slugfest.
Joe, you concerned about the running game? They move on from Brian Robinson, who was their most productive running back last season. You draft somebody in the 7th round. We don't know exactly how he's going to fit in. We expect Chris Rodriguez maybe to get the bulk of the carries. What do you think about the Commanders' running game?
I think it's going to be complementary to our passing game. You added Debo on one side. So you look at the additions, Larry on the left tackle position. You added offensive line. You added wide receiver. The running back situation, we've got guys that have been there. Again, it isn't just Jaden that benefits from being familiar with the system and having Cliff here. It's the whole offense that way. The guys that have been there can help the young guys learn. Getting Terry signed, I think, was so important. I mean, Terry had 13 touchdowns last year as a wide receiver, 1,000 yards again, 82 catches. I mean, his performance is unbelievable. Now you add Debo to that mix, and I think it complements the running game. They work together. It's like, you look at the Miami Dolphins with Tyreek Hill, okay? He changes the dynamics of what you can do in the secondary when it comes to run support, because he can go over the top. Well, Terry can go over the top. We have people who can get down. Noah can get over the top. So I think our passing game is really going to complement the offense when it comes to running the football.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, because Jaden was so remarkable last year, and I don't see any reason why he's not going to grow from it. But tell us what kind of evolution you're guessing we might see from Jaden from year 1 to year 2.
I think a comfort level with the offense a little bit. I think you're going to see him get the ball out of his hands a little bit easier, a little bit quicker than he did last year. Last year, he relied so much on his athletic ability to escape and make plays. I still think we're going to go for it on 4th down, because they trust him implicitly with the ball.
All right.
I still believe that.
You think he'll rush for as much?
Process. Pardon?
Do you think he'll rush for as much?
It depends on what happens up front. I mean, if the offensive line does their job, no. I think he's going to be called upon in different instances to be able to utilize his legs. But I saw last year where he made a lot of moves, made a lot of plays, and I think that's one thing he'll learn about. Having studied himself, that's really what you do, is you sit down and study yourself. You talk about a growth. Tom Brady's a good friend, great friend. I asked Tom about the growth at the position. As Tom, you've done so much. You won championships. He said, every day you have to learn. Every day you're learning something. You're learning something about a teammate. You're learning something about the offense. You're learning something about yourself. And I see Jaden being that kind of a student of this game. I was thinking about him last night because I knew we were going to have a conversation. He has football intelligence as well as academic intelligence. He's a smart young man, but he has football smarts. He's learned to protect himself. He's learned to get out of bounds. He's learned to be able to line up for the next play. You don't do anybody any good if you're, basically on a table in the training room trying to heal. So he's learning all those things, which is part of his growth.
We're joined by Joe Theismann on the Rude Guest Hotline. Joe, do you have any worries about the wideout room outside of Terry and Debo as far as the depth? Because Noah Brown was barely on the field during training camp. Luke McCaffrey underwhelmed as a rookie, and the reports on him out of camp weren't great. They add Jalen Lane in the draft. Do you have any worries about that room? It seems a little top-heavy.
Well, I think if you look at a lot of rooms, they're top-heavy. I mean, once you go through 1, 2, 3, they're basically the starters. Then you have position players basically that are guys that come in specific situations. So they're basically situational players. Luke is the kind of guy who can, operate in the slot, basically. He's not going to be an outside guy. And Debo's in there. So if something happens, you've got somebody that's familiar with the system to be able to step in. I think the depth is good enough that if something happens to the starters, you have somebody in there who can make plays. Then you can't forget Ertz. You can't ignore the tight end position, which was a big position for us last year.
Hey, Joe, I'm going to guess the answer to this is no. Did you ever have an opposing player spit on you before the game started, like Jalen Carter did last night, to Dak Prescott.
I turned the game on. I'm sitting and watching it, and I looked at this and I thought, I've never, ever seen anybody insult his teammates like he did last night. Because it's an insult to the guys that busted their rear ends. His teammates worked their rear ends off for this football game. They pointed to this football game. It's the opening game. And you get yourself thrown out before a snap ever happens.
Right.
I mean, to me, he should stand up in front of every one of those players. There should be a meeting this morning, and he should stand up in front of everybody. Whether they won or lost didn't matter. They wound up winning. But he should stand up and say, guys, look, I am so sorry that I let you down, that I disappointed you. All our hard work for this moment, and I basically tried to ruin it, and I apologize. That's what I would expect from this young man.
Joe, in the book that I wrote, Faith Restored, one of the things that I hit on is kind of how it's night and day from the previous regime to this regime. They're going to have a Santana Moss ceremony at halftime. Art Monk is going to be honored. And when they did Darryl Green's ceremony at halftime, it was a home run. It was like handled perfectly. And I know you were friendly with the previous owner, but you see the difference too. What has impressed you about what Josh Harris and this ownership group has done? Obviously, Jaden drives the product on the field, but off the field, this connection with the fans and everything is totally different. What has impressed you about the new regime?
I think there are people in place with Josh and his group that they understand football. They understand winning. Starting with Adam. I mean, they really understand what they want to do with football team. They know what they want. I mean, they've remodeled the practice facility, the locker rooms, and everything. It's the place is just fantastic. Mm-hmm. I mean, you walk through that place and you look at it and you go, if I'm a guy coming from another team, if I'm considered a free agent to come in, you walk around through that facility and you go, wow, man, these people care. They care about the players. They care about what's going on. They're doing an unbelievable job to support what we want to do. And again, I think from a personnel standpoint, you had great quality personnel in every aspect, in the front office, on the field. And, I just think the direction that they're moving in is a very positive one. Of course, winning as many games as you do in your first year, second year, really, it gets everybody excited, for a long time. And that's, with your book, Faith Restored. It really is. I mean, last year just ignited everything. Now, don't go overly crazy about this football team until they get on the field. I mean, last year was terrific. We're excited about what they accomplished. But it's a different story this year. You're not playing a bunch of 1:00 games. You're playing on Thursday. You're playing on Sunday. Yeah. You're playing late. You're playing overseas. These are all adjustments. And this is where the first question you asked about an older team, this is where an older team has an advantage because they're used to the changes. Young teams, it's a little disorienting for them. But the older teams, you basically get a feel for what you need to do. The veterans can sort of bring the young guys along and say, man, get your rest. Stay hydrated. You're going to be on an airplane for a while. You're going to have time off. How do you handle your time off? This is where the veterans on this football team can make a tremendous impact on the ball club.
Joe, you were part of broadcasting for years doing primetime games. Could you have imagined how much it's grown where you've got Thursday night football, you got Friday night, you've got all these different streaming services, you got games in Brazil.
You don't know
the Commanders are playing in Madrid. It's ridiculous.
I'm going to be in Madrid for that one. Wow. No, it's crazy. I mean, it shows you the growth and dominance and the foresight of the National Football League. They want to dominate the airways. I mean, you don't see college football going up against the NFL. They just won't do it. They really can't do it because they'd lose out, I believe, in the long run. You're going to have the fans that'll watch that particular college team, but that's the way it's – unless it's Notre Dame. Everybody will watch that. But sort of had to sprinkle that in. But no, it's been different. When we first started doing Sunday night football, it was like, wow, we took a great leap. And then we started doing some Thursdays. I was there really – when ESPN got the contract to do, NFL football, I did 8 in the studio and 8 on the road. We only had half a season. And now it's dominates the world as far as the NFL goes. And people would say, well, it's a saturation of the market. There's so much football. People have been starved. I walk around the city and everybody comes up and says, or I go down to the restaurant, my restaurant called Joe Theismann's, by the way. I'm sitting there and people say, oh, thank goodness it's here. It's finally here. This has been the toughest 6 weeks of my life. I'm so excited about it. And, it's the game of games is what it really is.
Mm-hmm. Well, Joe's a fan, like for the book. I talked to him about it, and you can take us through this real quick. Last one. Take us through the last couple minutes of that Hail Mary game, because you told me you never completed a Hail Mary pass.
No, I don't even think I tried to remember when we were talking about it. I tried to remember if I ever tried one. We were so efficient as an offense. I mean, it was unbelievable. And coach had us always ready, but I'm sitting there watching it, and like everybody else thinking, oh, geez, the Bears are going to win. Oh gosh, we were on a roll, and could this be the beginning of something like we've seen so many times before, turning the wrong way? And then, the ball goes up in the air, and I'm going, oh, okay, here's a Hail Mary. I've seen different guys throw Hail Marys, and all of a sudden the ball is caught. And that's what I'm talking about. I mean, that's it, right? That to me, I think, was a catalyst for this football team to know that, you talk about believe. We can get it done. We believe we can do it. But then all of a sudden, there's that divine intervention that I look at and say, okay, it isn't just us. Those kind of things are pure luck. You don't sit down and design it like you do a route being run down around the goal line and put the move on the defensive back and you hit him with a quick post. It's not drawn up that way. It's throw it in the air and hope. That's why they call it a Hail Mary. My dear friend Drew Pearson and Roger Staubach were the ones that created that against Minnesota. So to me, it was just an exhilarating moment for me to be able to see that happen. And like I said, I think that jump started us going forward.
And you said you scared your wife because you screamed and jumped out of your chair.
Scared Robin half to death. I jumped out of my chair. I screamed. She looked at me like I was nuts, which she looks at me a lot like I'm nuts.
Joe, always love talking to you. Appreciate it. It's honored you did the forward for the book. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Talk to you guys later.
Yep. Thanks, man. Great Joe Theismann. We got Scott Abraham joining us at 9:00 on a Football Friday. But next, we'll sprinkle a little entertainment. Do EB's entertainment page next here on the Junkies.